So today, we're going to do something a little different. We are not going to cram for the Azure 104 exam. Nope. Instead, we're going to use its blueprint to really understand one of the most critical roles in all of tech today, the Microsoft Azure Administrator. Let's dive in. I mean, just think about that for a second. Everything your company does, every single application, all of your critical data, your entire digital world, it all lives in the cloud. So, who's got the keys to that kingdom? Who makes sure it's safe, running fast, and not costing a fortune? Well, that person is the Azure Administrator.
And you've got to understand, this is so much more than just a tech support role. The modern Azure Administrator is really a cloud architect. They're the ones designing, building, and then guarding the company's entire digital headquarters. They have to juggle massive complexity, guarantee ironclad security, and always keep an eye on the budget.
At the end of the day, the job really boils down to these three key things: implementing new stuff, managing the whole environment day to day, and constantly monitoring its health. So let's use the exam structure to break down what that actually looks like in the real world.
First things first, before you can build a single server or store one file, you have to lay the foundation. This first part is all about setting the ground rules. Who are you? What are you allowed to touch? And how much money can you spend?
The front door to this entire digital world is Microsoft Entra ID. You can think of it as the central security desk. It's the system that asks every single person and every single application, "Who are you?" and then checks their credentials before letting them in. It manages everybody.
And what's so fascinating here is the total shift in philosophy. The old way, on-premises Active Directory, was built for a castle with a moat, a private internal network. But Entra ID, it's built for the open internet. It speaks the language of the cloud, using modern protocols and APIs to connect to everything, everywhere. This is way more than just a name change. It's a completely different way of thinking for a world where people work from anywhere.
Ah, a classic, real-world headache that every single cloud admin has dealt with. A team, with the best intentions, spins up a new virtual machine. But whoops, they picked the super powerful, ultra-expensive one, and now your budget is completely blown. So how do you stop that from happening over and over again?
Well, you don't do it manually. The answer is in the administrator's governance toolkit. First, they use something called Azure Policy to set hard rules like, nope, you can only deploy these specific cost-effective machine sizes. Done. Then they use Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC, to make sure only the right people can deploy VMs at all. And for the final safety net, they set up budgets that scream for help if spending starts to get out of control. It's a beautiful, automated system of control.
Okay, with our identity and our rules locked down, now we can finally start building. This next bit is all about carving out our digital property, creating the virtual land and the virtual warehouses where the whole business is going to operate.
The very first thing an administrator builds is a virtual network, or a VNet. The best way to think about this is like your own private, fenced-off piece of land in the enormous world of Azure. It's this secure, isolated space where all your other stuff, your servers, your databases, can live and talk to each other safely. And, of course, on that plot of land, you need a warehouse. That's the Azure Storage Account. And it's an incredibly flexible warehouse. It can hold anything from giant video files, which are called blobs, to regular old file shares, all the way to perfectly structured data tables. Pretty much all data in Azure starts its life in a storage account.
Okay, but what about the bad stuff? What about disasters? A physical data center can have a power outage, or worse. As the administrator, you have to plan for this. How do you make sure that one single point of failure doesn't drag your entire business down with it? And this is where the pure magic of the cloud comes in. The solution is called availability zones. When an admin chooses something like zone redundant storage, here's what happens behind the scenes. Instead of having just one copy of your data, Azure instantly makes 3. And it doesn't just stick them on different shelves, it places each copy in a completely separate physical data center, each with its own power, its own cooling, its own networking. It's brilliant. If one entire building goes dark, your data is still safe and online in the other 2. So, we've got our secure plot of land. We've got our disaster-proof warehouses. Now it's time to add the engines, the compute resources that are actually going to run all our business applications and do the real work. So here, the administrator has a really important choice. They can go with virtual machines, which is like renting an entire server. You're responsible for the whole thing, the operating system, all the security patches, the works. Or they can use containers.
With containers, you just worry about your app and its data. It's like you package up only what you need and you let the platform worry about the rest. This is a huge distinction, and it completely changes the admin's job.
Here's another one of those classic business scenarios. You launch an amazing marketing campaign, it's a huge success, and bam, your website traffic just explodes. How do you keep the site from crashing under the load? You can't have someone sitting there at 2 a.m. frantically trying to add more servers by hand.
The solution is just elegant. It's called autoscale. The administrator sets up a really simple rule. Something like, hey, if the average CPU usage across my servers goes above 80%, just automatically add more of them. So as you can see, when traffic spikes in the afternoon, the system just scales itself out from 2 VMs to 6 to handle the demand. Then, later that night when things quiet down, it automatically scales back in to save you money. It's a perfect hands-off solution.
All right, the digital headquarters is built, it's powered up, it's running, but the work is never really over. The final and honestly the most ongoing responsibility is to monitor everything from a central watchtower and make sure it all stays healthy.
And that watchtower, that central nervous system for the entire operation, is Azure Monitor. It's constantly collecting performance data, we call those metrics, and detailed event records, we call those logs, from every single thing in your environment. This gives the administrator a single pane of glass, a real-time view into the health of their entire kingdom.
And here's the really smart part. They don't just sit there staring at dashboards. A good administrator automates this whole process. They set up alert rules. For instance, a rule might say, if Azure Monitor sees a server CPU pinned at over 90% for 5 minutes straight, trigger an alert. That alert then notifies an action group, which can send an email, a text message, or even kick off an automated script to try and fix the problem itself. The key is, they find out about problems proactively, often before any real users are even affected.
And of course, there's the ultimate insurance policy, backup and recovery. The administrator sets up what's called a Recovery Services Vault. Think of it as a super secure, fireproof safe for your data. They define policies that say exactly how often to back things up and how long to keep those copies. So if anything ever goes horribly wrong, from one person accidentally deleting a file to a major disaster, the admin has the power to turn back time and restore everything.
So when you step back and look at this whole blueprint, you don't see someone who just manages servers anymore. You see an architect, a governor, and an automation expert for a hugely complex digital estate. And that brings us to the big question, right? As these cloud platforms get smarter and more automated on their own, what's next for this role? Well, it's going to shift even more, away from hands-on clicking and towards high-level strategy, cost optimization, and building the automated systems that run the future. The architect's job is never really done.